Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take a look at Venus's entrance into the sign of Gemini. Now, Venus is entering Gemini on May 8th, that's tomorrow, and will be there until June 2nd. So we get almost a month worth of Venus transiting through the sign of Gemini, which is interesting because Mercury is also in the sign of Gemini right now and is about to turn retrograde. The sun will enter Gemini later in the month of May, and then we've got a lunar eclipse in Gemini in the month of June. So there's a lot of attention coming to that whole sign house of Gemini in your birth chart. So before I dive into that, I want to remind you all that I'm promoting my course right now, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystics, starts in June. Here's my website. Go to nightlightastrology.com, click on the courses page, go to the first year course in particular, unless you're in one of my courses already, in which case don't forget that the second year course and the horary program begin in June. If you have a background in astrology already, and you understand your dignities and things like that, then you can sign up for the horary course as well. I do let people in who have a background for that course. My second year course, you have to have taken my first year program, but horary is a little bit more open. Anyway, my first year program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, begins in June. It starts on June 13th. It meets on Sundays, typically 3 Sundays on and 1 Sunday off. For a year, we have about 100 hours worth of classroom content. They're all held on Zoom webinars. They're all recorded, so you can correspond with the course or you can show up live. It's up to each person to decide. People from all over the world whose time zones are different, so we make it available for everyone in that way. There are a bunch of guest lecturers that come in and give talks on the subject of ancient astrology. And we also have a ton of additional resources for people as they're going through the program. We have breakout study sessions with that my staff help lead. I'm available for questions year round. We have a group forum discussion. There's optional homework, reading assignments, bonus material, all sorts of stuff. And then at the end of the program, we bring in live clients and show you how the techniques are actually put into place. So it's a really valuable program for people who are wanting to take the next step with their love of astrology. If you have any questions about it, feel free to email me, info@nightlightastrology.com. We are every day, more people are registering. So really excited to study with a new group of students. This will be the 22nd program that I've run, 22nd year-long program that I've taught. And we've had, going on a couple of thousand students go through the programs now. So it's a great resource for people who need that structured guidance and that feeling of having a teacher and a community to help you learn and to ask all the questions you have and to organize and solidify your practice of astrology or your interest in it. The early bird rate is in effect all the way up until the start of the class. If you pay in full, you get $500 off the course. There's also a payment plan and need-based tuition for people who might be on a tight budget or who may, be out of work at the moment or whatever the case might be. So check that out if it might help you. All right, so what we're going to do now is dive into Venus and Gemini. I'm going to bring up the real-time clock and give you a feeling for this transit. And I want to highlight a few really interesting parts of the transit as well. So first of all, here is Venus moving into the sign of Gemini tomorrow. And you can see I'm actually moving it to May 9th just out of convenience, but it enters tomorrow, May 8th, later in the evening. And you can see it moving into Gemini right there. And of course, in Gemini right now, it is co-present with the host, the ruling deity of the temple of Gemini, which is Mercury. Now, like I said, there's a lot of action coming into the sign of Gemini very shortly. Let's watch. So what's going to happen as the transit goes on is Venus is, for one of the things that Venus is going to do rather early on in the transit is Venus is going to go into a trine with Saturn. So you can see right here, here's Venus at about 12 degrees. There's Saturn at about 13 degrees. This is around May 19th and 20th. We're going to see that those two planets cross paths. So that's kind of one of the more potent transits of the Venus in Gemini time period. And you can go back and you could even say that on the 18th, Venus will go across the north node of the moon, depending on if you use mean or true node measurement. But then it hits Saturn. Then the next piece that I find really interesting is we're going to see Venus and Mercury right around the same time pass through squares to Neptune. This right there, you can see, goes right around late May. You're seeing Venus going through the square to Neptune. And then as it does so, Mercury is starting to slow down to station and turn retrograde. So you can see this is kind of rare where Venus will actually conjoin Mercury, the faster moving planet. Typically, Mercury is the faster moving planet. And if there's going to be a conjunction, between the two of them, often it's Mercury passing Venus in one way or another. But here you have this interesting moment where, because Mercury is slowing down so much, and Venus is still moving at a good clip, Venus passes Mercury, and it does so right as Mercury is stationing. You can see that right as Venus has passed over, see a little S there under Mercury, that's Mercury stopping. And then right after that, Mercury will turn retrograde. And you can see the little RX that comes in under Mercury right there. So this is very end of the month of May. Now, as that's happening, of course, Mercury is going to dip back into the square to Neptune right away. So these are the dynamics that we're going to be tracking later in the cycle. And there's a lot of different meanings. So it would be, I don't want to go into it too deeply today, because it would be, I would underserve the necessary interpretation. And so we'll come back to that. But the one thing that I will say about this is that we have very strong reasons to believe that the Mercury-Venus themes are going to be dominant for the rest of the month of May, and they're building and intensifying by the end of the month. Then we're gonna throw some other things in there too, but right after that, you can see right around the same time that Mercury's turning retrograde, the sun is passing through the north node, which means that an eclipse is about to form. And we're going to see that coming through by June 10th. So if I just go forward just a little bit, here is the solar eclipse on June 10th. And notice that at that time, Mercury is basically about to go through the heart of the sun. So that new moon solar eclipse, of course, all solar eclipses happen on new moons, but that solar eclipse that's happening also has Mercury right at the heart of the sun getting its reboot, starting its process of rebirth and into the morning star phase. So this is very significant transition that's happening around the sign of Gemini between now and about mid-June. Excuse me. You could take it even further, though. If you wanted to, you could go even further than that, because Sun will spend in Gemini all the way until late June, obviously the summer solstice, about June 20th, 21st. And Mercury is stationing and turning direct toward the end of June, at which point, after it turns direct, it will move forward. And then as it moves forward, it all the way until about July 11th. So, a long period of Mercury being in Gemini and of Venus in Gemini, Venus eclipsing Mercury as Mercury turns retrograde in Gemini, a solar eclipse in Gemini. So it's just, you can just see the repetitiveness of all of the themes. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. It's just a little more broadly speaking, what does this bring? So we're going to do this in two parts. The first one is to just get a feeling for Mercury and Venus hanging out together. Like, what does that look like, and what can you expect? The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to revisit Mercury and Venus. Well, we're just taking those themes, then we're going to plug them into the 12 houses and give you just a few brief, quick hits about what you might expect, what kinds of themes or topics will be activated based on Mercury and Venus in the 12 houses. Okay, so first of all, when Venus goes into Gemini, it is in Mercury's house. And when Mercury is also in that house, they make for a very powerful pairing. And generally speaking, when the two are in the same place, they're called co-present, and they're moving into bodily union with one another, which means that the two planets have more of a blending. They start to blend their qualities. It's going to be Mercury dominant because it's Mercury's sign and Mercury's in its own sign. But there's going to be, it's like Gemini infused with a lot of Venus. It's like you're making a mercurial drink, but you're infusing it with a strong Venusian flavoring. So what does that look like? Well, okay, I'm just going to list things that are rather mundane and maybe more archetypal or psychological. So you have the idea of, for example, technology purchases or media purchases. I'm going to buy a website domain, or I'm going to get new tech equipment. I'm going to revise my technological setup. Those are things that I'm already planning on doing, and I'm doing a digital purge and things like that. These are things that I had planned, and I was like, well, I'll do it after we move in. And then I was like, oh, look, that'll happen to be right when Mercury and Venus are getting together, and Mercury's turning retrograde. So any kind of revising, like building of, revising of, developing, reorganizing of tech, media, gadgets, stuff like that. But like buying a new camera, for example, or getting a new phone or something like that. I could see there being an aesthetic dimension to it that's important. For example, I'll be setting up my new studio during this time back at the end of this hallway. And I'll be using that studio for like filming. And so like this, some people were pointing out in my video yesterday, I was standing up in the video that I shot yesterday, and it basically had the microphone in front of my face. This Blue Yeti has been a loyal helper and companion, but I'll probably be getting a new microphone, something that's not quite the space station that this is. But at any rate, I'll be getting probably a new microphone, new computer setup, new office setup, and trying to make sure that it looks decent on camera, And I'm not like I'm not a big studio tech designer type of person. Like I do my best. I'll slap a Narnia picture that my kids drew on the wall and call it good. But I'll be thinking about those kinds of things, and you might be too. Tech purchases, any combination of art and technology, beauty and technology, design, and aesthetics, and something digital, podcasting. Like finding a pleasant voice. When you listen to a podcast, like one of the things that I think attracts us to a podcast is that we enjoy listening to someone talk, that the way that they talk or think or present or articulate is enjoyable to us. And so, you may also find that you're like, this would be a great period under which to refine and review and kind of develop your speaking or teaching or public artistic presence, and with some kind of creative medium. So it's a good transit for that kind of stuff. You also have deals and agreements. Venus is agreement. Mercury likes to negotiate. So negotiation and agreement generally coming together. Really good time for making deals or stuff like that. It's good for sales. It's a good transit for sales and salesmanship. Positive negotiations, games, sports, enjoyable things, recreation, playfulness. It's so funny because last year, you guys probably remember, Venus was retrograde in Gemini last year. And although that one part of that was sort of civil and social upheaval and unrest, which we will talk about in a minute, the other thing that was noticeable for me during that Venus in retrograde period, or Venus in Gemini and retrograde period last summer, was that I started returning to a whole bunch of childhood games that I got my girls interested in. I mean, they were like Sorry, the Game of Life. Wow, that's such a terrible game. You guys ever played the Game of Life? Game is messed up. Sorry. Have a baby. Move ahead 10 spaces. You're a lawyer. You win. Terrible game. Anyway, what else was there? Don't Wake the Dragon, or Don't Break the Ice, or something like that. Hungry Hippos, Candyland. I mean, it was just raining old childhood games when Venus was in Gemini last year for me. And I was like, wow, that's kind of fun. The Settlers of Catan. In fact, my wife's cousins came and with us on like a little getaway, because we were feeling so cooped up 2 months into the COVID restrictions that we had a trip planned. We had made an annual trip down to the Outer Banks in North Carolina, and like we get these, like there's these rental cottages, and we rented one and went with our cousins, and we had it planned for a while before COVID had even hit. But we went down, and it was like a Settlers of Catan marathon. We were just playing Catan every day. It was really fun. We were staying up late on the porch, eating peanuts and talking, and then also, what was that? There was a TV. It was like a Netflix TV show, and it was super weird. It was a cartoon, and it was very beautiful and sort of psychedelic and dreamy. And I forget the name of it, but it was this Netflix cartoon series that one of my cousins also got me into, and it was just very like playful and intellectually stimulating. It reminded me of that movie. I don't know if you guys remember this movie from a long time ago called Waking Life, but it was kind of like that. And I don't remember the name of it. If you guys do, put it in the chat box. Anyway, so the almost like the comic strip. Like I was just as when Mercury moved into Gemini, and I was unpacking a box, and I found some old Calvin and Hobbes, like the books. You guys know what I'm talking about? Calvin and Hobbes books. And I was like, oh my God, I remember these. I was opening some boxes I hadn't opened for years. And I thought, oh, my daughters may, like my at least my 5-year-old may be ready for some of this. Anyway, so that kind of playful comic strip, graphic novels, cartoons with wit, and almost like Family Guy or The Simpsons or South Park, or just that kind of like witty, maybe slightly crude. You also have the idea of playfulness in words and the desire for socialization, like a fun bohemian, coffee shop with, decent musician. Oh God, you guys can see how I feel. Anyway, so oversharing. There's another one. Oversharing. You can very easily, with Mercury and Venus coming together in the sign of Gemini, just blah 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 blah. Lack of boundaries, usually pretty fun, but kind of that oversharing, bubbly, slightly caffeinated feeling. Multiple interests and flirtation. Unquestionably, I will get, without a doubt, I will get people who are wondering about polyamory flooding in whenever Venus goes into Gemini. And I'm always like, well, the transit lasts about 4 weeks. So, see how you feel in a month from now. I'm just kidding. But yeah, multiple interests, multivalence and gender, sexual mutability, bisexuality, questions about questions about identity and sexuality, generally speaking, wouldn't surprise to see that kind of become more of a topic again when Venus goes into Gemini. It tends to be that way because Gemini, Mercury is a sign that can switch fluidly between masculine and feminine. So it has real ranging freedom between the sort of gender sex categories. Anyway, flirtation, the desire for intelligence. I asked people this last year, and someone told me what it was, but I'm forgetting now. And it's a name for people who get turned on by intelligence. So Mercury and Venus together, if you like people who talk in bed, then words and sexual stimulation, poetry, singing, songwriting, digital, technical, aesthetics, marketing and advertising, wit, charm and fun, media and sexuality. So that's kind of the territory. But let's also just say, very broadly speaking, Venus is the bringer of good fortune, agreement, benefits, and pleasant things. And so Venus is just going to grant that and amplify the benefic feeling of mercurial things. So it's like Mercury's just getting the gift of Venusian enjoyment around it in a way. That's one of the simplest ways you can think about it. Now let's take it through the houses so that you can get a feeling for what this might look like depending on where it lands in your chart. I'm doing super quick here. I'm nothing too deep, just to get the wheels turning for you all. So I'm going to, let's just start with, let's put, whoops, no wonder. I was like, why is this? Okay, here we go. All right, so we are going to, we'll start by putting Aries on the ascendant. Okay, so if you're an Aries rising, this is for your whole sign houses, right? If you're an Aries rising, this lands in the 3rd house. Pretty mental, communicative place. Could have something to do with siblings. I've seen, like, if Venus transits to the 3rd house, my siblings getting married, or I've just met my siblings' boyfriend or something like that. So siblings, maybe just the mind, speech, communication. It kind of doubles. Now, the third house obviously has the relationship to the mind that Mercury also has. There's some correlation there, and so you can think of this, if you're an Aries rising, as pleasing words, speech, communication, dynamics in friendships or relationships, and so forth. So that's pretty straightforward. Then if we put Taurus on the ascendant, then we're placing that Venus and Mercury dynamic in the second house, which is going to be place of money and finances. Really good for business. There might be some changes or revisions or revising of business or money or finances around this time. And that, that's going to last through June for you. But generally, I like that, just kind of good fortune coming into that area of life. Maybe, again, like I'm a Taurus rising. This perfectly describes that I have to buy some new tech equipment for my office. Okay, so if you're Gemini rising, it's in your first house. Venus, Mercury are going to want to make themselves present in your body, in your mind, in your sense of identity, and they can kind of take over a little bit too. Like whenever I was just joking yesterday about how Venus is in Taurus in my first house, and I've been just like snarfing sweets. Maybe that's kind of, someone said maybe it's comfort food because you're moving, and I laughed and I said, yeah, probably. But Venus in the first house, like you can get a little bit of a sweet tooth, or there can be an extra sort of sexy, flirtatious energy that attracts people to you, or that you're just feeling a little bit more witty and social. But it's a good energy to have around your mind and body, especially as a Gemini. This is your home planet, Mercury. So you're just getting that really uplifting quality of Venus coming into a very personal and physical sphere of life. All right, so if we go forward from there, put Cancer on the ascendant, it's in the 12th house. I would be like very careful of like sort of like love affairs or gossip and anything that's a little bit more on the self-destructive side, with it being in the 12th house. But this is also about things that are maybe unconscious things that need to be voiced or spoken somehow. So you just have to be really mindful of that. Now, if you're a Leo rising, then this is something that's happening in your 11th house, and that's going to be the house of community, groups, and friends. So I love this for just pleasing and harmonious and enjoyable and kind of fun things happening in the place of groups, community, and friendships. Allies too, like people who come into your life and have something very positive to offer you on some level. All right, let's go ahead to putting Virgo on the ascendant. So when we put Virgo on the ascendant, this moves the Mercury-Venus contact into your 10th house. A lot happening in the area of career or your work in the world, your reputation. I think it looks pretty good. Of course, Mercury retrograde and a solar eclipse, there are some big changes coming in that area of life. But I like the idea of possibilities and sort of good fortune coming in generally with the Venus-Mercury there. So that's if you're a Virgo rising. If you're a Libra rising, this goes into your 9th house. And I like the idea of friendships, community, and sort of a really positive energy coming in intellectually into this area, the 9th house. It's a place that's very intellectual, also spiritual, religious. Maybe there's some kind of travel that you're going to plan, or yes, I like Venus, Mercury in the 9th house for sharing in meaningful conversations about beliefs or truth, or finding religious or intellectual community. So those are some nice transits there. I also like agreement in like disputes. Like the 9th house is associated with the law, and sometimes will show up when legal disputes are happening. And so when you see Mercury and Venus in that house, the possibility for finding some sort of ethical agreement or the ability to resolve conflicts seems pretty nice there. Okay, so if we go to Scorpio rising, then we're taking this into your 8th house. Now, in the 8th house, I like it, like if you're in a partnership or relationship, I like good things coming in through other people, like a partner getting a raise or a job change that's lucrative, or the possibility for good things to come in through others that you're close with, since the 8th house has a lot to do with other people's resources, money, and so forth. On the other hand, Mercury retrograde in this house, a solar eclipse in this house, you do want to be careful of almost like a you may want to, what do I want to say, read the fine print, or be careful of what kind of agreements or what kinds of social or personal contracts you're getting into karmically, because some of them you might have to revise, or some of them may carry a price tag. The eighth house can be like that. So just be a little careful of that. But anyway, if you are a Sagittarius rising, it's falling in your seventh house of relationships. So a lot of focus on these energies coming in love and relationships. That could be pretty fun. I like that energy for the relationship house. Solar eclipse, Mercury retrograde. Okay, maybe there's some bigger changes coming in relationships as well. But I would think of them as mostly positive and changes that are fun and probably inspiring, opening up possibilities, new avenues of growth coming in through relationships with the solar eclipse. So I don't think it'll be that bad. If you are looking at Capricorn rising, then this one I go, okay, so, sixth house, a little bit more challenging house. You've got Venus and Mercury coming into a house that was associated with the god of war, Mars, a place of conflict, strife, hard work, etc. So not always easy. But the idea of being able to work through and harmonize and find agreement in that house with Mercury and Venus there seems likely to me. So I would say like finding graceful solutions to complex problems is probably one of the themes for that placement. So with Aquarius on the ascendant, then we're putting Venus and Mercury into the fifth house. Now, this is one of the ones, the placements that I like the best, because the fifth house was called the joy of Venus and is a place of pleasure, romance. It's a very creative place. So love this placement for Venus and Mercury together. Probably a more romantic, fun, pleasant, outgoing, social, very stimulating place for those two to be meeting. Maybe pretty kind of like sexual or romantic as well, though I would be careful of looking for deeper commitments at this time with those energies there. Probably more passing things or things that are more flirtatious and fun. Maybe stuff with kids going on there, an emphasis on children, possibly pregnancy. Those are kind of the fifth house topics. If we move along to putting Pisces on the ascendant, then the Venus-Mercury energy is going to come in through the fourth house of home and family. I love that for fun in the home, fun with family members or siblings, or even roommates, or, almost like a staycation or something like that. I think that's what they call those. So good kind of fun energy there. But of course, there are changes, and there's something bigger or deeper opening up around home and family as well with the eclipse coming in June. Now, if we move Aries onto the ascendant, we've come all the way back around. So that, I believe, does it. Yeah, that does it. We went all the way around. So hopefully that was helpful for everybody. I wanted to just, kind of just rip through those really quickly and give you a feel for it. But remember that we will be breaking down this transit all the way into June, and we will refresh on the eclipse. We'll be taking a look at Venus's trine to Saturn. We'll be taking a look at Venus's actual conjunction with Mercury. We'll be taking a look at Mercury's retrograde. So this is just sort of a prelude, getting you a feel for it, especially because as Venus ingresses over this weekend, you're going to feel it hit that house right away. Usually you're just going to notice it's like Venus, it's kind of like, if you can use this analogy, just imagine that you're going to have a guest over to your home. One of the most important moments is the moment that they actually enter your home. That they were walking in. The most interesting things might happen 2 hours later, while you're having dinner or something. But that moment where they actually walk in and now they're in your house, there's a significant energetic shift that happens at that moment. So that's why we're tracking this today. All right, that's what I've got for you guys for today. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Let me know what you think about Venus in Gemini. Do you have that placement? How do you notice it showing up over the weekend? Leave me your comments in the comment section below. And if you have any questions about my upcoming course or want to sign up for it, be sure to check out my website, nightlightastrology.com, the first year course page, or you can email me, info@nightlightastrology.com. All right, that's what I've got. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll talk to you again soon.